Look who it is. Oh, this is a new show for me. I love the show. I love watching the show with you and Nando, but being on the show feels good, man.
Matt, it's a pleasure having you, my friend. I'm glad to see you and have you filling in. It's the first time for us hooking up on a pod, and I'm looking forward to this big time.
We got to get you on the Mind of Mansion show with me as well. This is the great benefit of having such a wide network of shows. Have all kinds of super talented people. I sometimes I can't believe it. I have to
No.
pinch myself, especially the work of Theo Greminger. He knows everybody. He knows what's good. He's the tastemaker of this industry, and bringing all these people together,
Yep.
under this one banner has just allowing people just to tune in on YouTube, and you just to get your dynasty, your DFS, your seasonal leagues, your betting, your
Got it
pick'ems. You
all
get
covered.
everything.
Yep, have it all covered. And Theo's the hardest working man in the business here. So, yeah, he put it all together, and it's a great platform.
Well, I mean, he certainly gives you the impression that he's working hard. Okay, Theo will let you know that he's about to get off a call, to get on another call with another person who's very important, and this is that he's constantly making things happen. This is the impression that he gives off, right? And he's also at the same time writing an article. He's doing all these things. Yes, he works very hard, but I also think he does do a good job of letting everyone around him know how hard he's working.
That's great. Yep.
He's definitely letting us. Yes. So yeah, but it's undeniable.
I
It's
can't look up
undeniable.
and not see him on a show every day, Matt. So I mean, it's
The content is
definitely running out of
undeniable.
hours.
Content don't lie. Chris,
Yes,
content don't lie.
that for sure, for sure. Matt, how'd you like week 3 in fantasy football this week? Was it a good week, bad week?
This was the final week that we needed. Like my feeling was this is what football is supposed to look like.
Yeah.
We finally got some shootouts. We
Mhm.
finally had some teams that looked like they were functional. We had fewer injuries than we've had, and it all
Yeah.
makes sense. It all makes sense. If these star players are not going to play a down of preseason football, you're not allowed to be surprised when week 1 and 2 are dysfunctional chaos and there's more injuries than we were ready for because, again, their bodies have not been acclimated to full speed NFL football. So it makes sense that there's this period of
Agreed.
time, this 2-week acclimation period, where really it's the month of September, and we really don't see real football we're accustomed to, the football we love, until the month of October. Fortunately, it happened a little bit earlier this year where week 3, most of these teams are now clicking into place. The Giants, there's a few of them that are not, and the question is, will they ever?
Mhm.
Right? But a lot of these teams are finally clicking. Finally see some shootouts. You look at the game totals. This is the big giveaway. This week, Chris,
Mhm.
no game totals under 40.
Yeah,
Not
thank God.
one.
You hate to see those 38s and 37s, that Jet Patriot 36 total from last week. You just knew it was going to be a stinker. Plus, it was terrible weather here in New York and up the eastern seaboard here. So get us out of the 30s. We don't want to see those type of games anyway. We want to see those high 40s and low 50s. And when you give us those mid 50s totals, that's what we're in for, like the Chargers Vikings game last week. But Matt, to your original point, I see it the same way as you. You know, with none of these big time players seeing the field in preseason, the first 2 weeks is like their preseason. So you see a lot of crazy crap going on. And then by the third week, after 3 weeks in, just like we saw, I think now we saw a big enough sample size that we could start trusting our eyes and what we see and what we, don't see. So 3 weeks in, it's time to roll now, starting here week 4. I think we know what players we could kind of trust and which players we can't trust going forward.
Is it true that you can trust wide receivers that have been productive for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 straight seasons? And that wide receivers that have either not played football recently or gave us one good month in their entire career, that it was a little weird looking back in hindsight. Certainly this is hindsight biased, but we look back and we see a bunch of head-scratching wide receivers going in round 3, 4, 5, and then you see some established studs going later, going in round 6, round 7, round 8. My number one head-scratching veteran wide receiver, there's ADP, was Chris Godwin. So I was confident that Chris Godwin was going to deliver this year at ADP. There was going to be a value. He actually hasn't even had a big week yet. He's not had a spike week. You said the targets, but that's about it. He's been relatively inefficient with those targets. But Mike Evans has been the one. Mike Evans has been the one who's delivering the most at cost, right? So he's been the best value at ADP from summer drafts has been Mike Evans, but there's been a bunch of veteran receivers that are delivering where if you had a question, especially in round 3, round 4, it's like, oh man, Olave's off the board. There's no young, exciting player I'm super excited about. And the receivers that I'm looking at are well past the age apex. What do? Do you go with the unproven youth and the tantalizing upside, the juice, or do you go with what you know is going to be productive? I think we've seen now that the move was, and correct me if I'm wrong, and maybe you disagree, but leaning veteran receiver in hindsight was the move.
Well, I mean, Matt, let's start there at the 3-4 turn in most drafts this this year. The cold names on the board at wide receiver were Amari Cooper, which nobody wanted, in my world. And Deebo Samuel was another guy that most high stakes fantasy players were out on and really didn't want it. And who was the name that was going before them that drafters couldn't get their hands on fast enough was Christian Watson. And now we look back and sure, Christian Watson got hurt. I don't want to, jump the shark here with, putting him down before he even touches the field. But, it's just, you see these veteran receivers early on in the season, they're all getting it done. Cooper and Deebo look like great round 4 picks right now, especially over some of these younger guys that were going in the 3rd round.
Deebo Samuel fell to the 4th round.
Yeah,
isn't that weird?
Deebo was not making it in the top 36 in a lot of my drafts. He was going after that. He was just that wide receiver that was just like, all right, you know what? I'll take veteran Deebo. A lot of people, and I love Ayuk as well, but a lot of people were trying to move Ayuk past Deebo. Keenan Allen, Matt, let's, the hottest wide receiver on the board. People didn't love Keenan Allen in the 3rd round. Another veteran receiver that's just looks like a complete smash pick. It looks like he's not well on his way to a top 5 or 6 overall wide receiver one season. And then most of all, Matt, let's talk about right there at the 1st, 2nd round turn. We didn't include Davante Adams, grizzled Davante Adams. Nobody really was excited about taking Davante Adams in drafts this year. He was not considered one of the elite 8 wide receivers that we all wanted and took in the 1st round. It's looking like, the injury to Aaron Rodgers factors in, but, Garrett Wilson over Davante Adams is a monumental, turning point for drafters so far this year and will be the rest of the season. But Davante Adams was slipped into the middle of the 2nd round where younger wide receivers such as Jalen Waddle, Olave, Devonta Smith were going sometimes ahead of him in drafts. So, a lot of these veteran names that we've seen for years, they've just gotten off to hot starts. I think it continues. You mentioned Mike Evans later on in the 7th, 8th round. Nobody wanted Mike Evans, and nobody wanted Michael Pittman either. And these guys are just target hounds every week. So the veteran wide receivers, they're not going away this year, Matt.
I think that of all the players you listed, the guy that I understood the most, the skepticism was Mike Evans. I was skeptical of Mike Evans. I thought that Chris Godwin was a much better fit for Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield has struggled to deliver the ball to the perimeter, to the boundary, to alpha receivers in his entire career. It's been a massive struggle. Chris Godwin now, he had through 2 games, he was averaging 7 targets a game. So Chris Godwin's giving you the targets, but he's going to have his. He's going to have games, man. Back. He's riding. That's the perfect trade target right now. Of all the players we've talked about, the guy that's about to go nuclear, he's about to have some big weeks with negative game scripts. rate it. You want that guy who's like, oh man, I guess Mike Evans is the alpha, and they really can only support one productive receiver there. I guess Chris Godwin, he's also past his prime. He's 27. 27 years old, but he's getting that nice 10 fantasy points a game. He's getting the targets. He's not getting the yards. He's not getting the touchdowns. That's what you want. You want the guys that's getting the targets, but has 0 touchdowns through 3 weeks. Who is that guy? It's Chris Godwin. So there's that guy, but Evans is 4 years older than Chris Godwin.
Mm-hmm.
His efficiency has been declining. He is getting a downgrade at quarterback going from Baker Mayfield. So there was a strong case to fade Mike Evans, not into oblivion, not into the 8th round, but to push him out of his traditional sort of 3rd round ADP, where that made sense to me. That made some logical sense to me. But if I'm in the 3rd round, I was looking at, I guess Keenan Allen's the move here. Right? I guess Keenan Allen's the move because I just can't talk myself into, the best example was Calvin Ridley, where I just could not get my head around that I'm going to take a risk on Calvin Ridley, who's also past the age apex. Like Calvin Ridley, I don't know if you know this, Calvin Ridley's older than Chris Godwin.
Sure.
Okay. He's a year older than Chris Godwin. So if you're like, oh, this guy's kind of dusty, I like to draft younger receivers in these early rounds. Well, Calvin Ridley's almost 30.
Yeah.
So what are we talking about? He hasn't played football. And there's a lot of good receivers in Jacksonville. There's a lot more good receivers in Jacksonville. Think about who their tight end is in Jacksonville. Evan Ingram. Who's the number 3 receiver? Zay Jones. Who's the number 3 receiver in Tampa? Who's their tight end? K. Doughton. Right? So
it just made sense. Target trees matter, Matt. Yeah.
The ADP disparity, the ADP arbitrage on Calvin Ridley and what he's been over the last few years, right? Even when he's healthy, right? What's his max upside? His max upside is Mike Evans, right? So that didn't make sense. Like looking at the route inventory and who those players are going to be running those routes and where the target consolidation is from team to team around the NFL. You saw it it was going to be 3 guys getting targets in Tampa, just 3 guys. Whereas in Jacksonville, there's 5 guys. Now we're seeing Travis Etienne getting 5 targets again.
Yeah.
Again, I was told that he can only get 3 targets a game. That's
what do? We buy into offenses in draft season, Matt, right? We're buying into quarterback play. We're buying into offenses we don't want to see stumble, go 3 and out over and over again. And when we looked at Tampa Bay's offense with a Baker Mayfield, who we've seen do nothing but struggle year in and year out, we say, well, he's coming in on a bad team, on a team that we thought was going to be a 3 or 4 win team, and tank this offense. So I don't want a Mike Evans and his 3 for 38 type games that Baker Mayfield's going to support. What I want is Calvin Ridley and these Jaguar pieces on an offense that we saw last year at the end of the season and into the playoffs going up and down the field, right? We got the big time young up and coming quarterback in Trevor Lawrence to support these guys. So, and let's be honest, coming into this season, Zay Jones was kind of like the forgotten guy. So we looked at this Jaguars offense as give me the big piece in Calvin Ridley with Christian Kirk, who was also a 4th or 5th rounder. Okay. He was another big piece. It wasn't until after week 1 where all of us just said, we got a problem here. Zay Jones is the one putting up the big numbers and Christian Kirk's running 55% of the routes. Okay. Now Christian Kirk owners here, we've caught a little bit of a break with the Zay Jones injury. And as of today, Doug Peterson comes out and says he's a long shot for this week in London. So we're going to get another week of just a smaller target tree of Ridley, Kirk, and Ingram, which we were all excited about last week, and it bombed out versus the Houston Texans at home. So, they get another week here to reprieve themselves here. But it's good that Zay Jones will be out of the offense again if you're a Calvin Ridley, Christian Kirk owner, as well as Evan Ingram, because, you saw all these guys get 7+ targets week in and week out if Zay Jones is out.
Just go back in time, man. Last year, who was the guy that who bombed out in the 4th round last year? It was Darnell Mooney, right? Darnell Mooney, because that guy was the young guy with the young quarterback that was inspiring the hope. He was inspiring the perceived upside.
Yeah.
Right. Chasing the perceived upside, where my position has been for years that if you're drafting in the 3rd, 4th round, you want to lock in production. You have so many more rounds to go. Right? So many more rounds to go. You have some of these leagues, these high stakes leagues, draft out to round 20. Right? You have so many rounds, Chris, where you can chase upside.
Sure.
Why are you taking on so much risk? Guy like Calvin Ridley has played no games in a year and a half. That's a lot of risk. Christian Watson.
So
injury aside, he had one good month.
Yeah.
That's a lot of risk. And then if you go back through time, you're going to be disappointed in a hell of a lot more of these wide receivers that have one or less seasons of consistent fantasy production than if you just close your eyes and draft Keenan Allen. Close your eyes, draft Chris Godwin. Again, I'm not saying draft every veteran wide receiver. Close your eyes and draft Mike Williams, right? Some of them worked out. Mike Williams got injured. Chris Godwin has underperformed. Some of them have hit in a big way, like Keenan Allen and like Mike Evans. And I was even going as far as saying, hey, Davante Adams over, say, a Garrett Wilson should be a debate. Like, that's a conversation. But no one was having that conversation. We were so over it. Davante Adams was a late 2nd rounder, and Garrett Wilson was an early 2nd rounder. And I remember asking this question on multiple shows. Ask Theo, ask Billy, why isn't this a conversation? And the answer is, well, you got to understand, this is just such a massive quarterback upgrade for Garrett Wilson. It's like, I get it, but I really think that Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave are almost identical players. In fact, they're comparable to each other on playerprofiler.com. And Derek Carr versus Aaron Rodgers is not a major difference at all. In fact, Derek Carr plays a little faster and Aaron Rodgers a little more accurate.
Right.
But it's Derek Carr who has the 4 consecutive seasons with 4,000 plus passing yards. And I agree. These guys belong in the early 3rd round. That's where these types of receivers should be going. And if you're going to be drafting a guy in the 2nd round, remember, Calvin Ridley got steamed up into the 2nd round. You were there for that.
Sure. Right? Well, the funny thing with Calvin Ridley,
draft guys in the 2nd round that we know are going to be productive and force them to give us an outlier bad season. That's what you should be. That's the kind of sort of.
Well, we also got sold on
you should lock in.
Yeah, we also got sold on the preseason hype. Seeing all the videos, because if you remember, Calvin Ridley came into the draft season in June and early July before he even stepped on the field in camp. Okay, and he was going in the 4th round. He was going right there with Christian Kirk. Sometimes Christian Kirk was going ahead of Calvin Ridley. It wasn't until they hit camp and we saw the videos of Calvin Ridley burning defenders, having the joint practices with other teams and killing the other team, the route running, the speed, it all came back. And we said, oh my God, well, this guy hasn't missed a beat. That's why Calvin Ridley became a mid-4th rounder up to a 3rd rounder, a mid-3rd rounder up to where the big money was on the line in high stakes leagues the last 2 weeks of the season. And Calvin Ridley was a late 2nd rounder. Okay. Now, I don't know how you feel about Calvin Ridley now the rest of the season, Matt. He had the one big game where we all in week 1 said, okay, this is why we drafted him. In week 2, we were all right. And now he's had 2 slow games, right, of 7-8 fantasy points. The targets are still there. He's missed a couple opportunities in the end zone these last couple weeks, dragging his feet where he could have had a touchdown. Lawrence underthrowing him a couple times. I'm not that concerned with Calvin Ridley's long-term input. Now, if you told me, hey, let's go back 3 weeks ago when you were drafting and will you take Keenan Allen over Calvin Ridley? Sure, but we could do that in every round with different players straight up and down the board. My biggest regret,
thing.
Matt,
it's just a process thing. Like
it is, but my biggest regret, Matt,
it's a process thing. I would still look at the process. Drafting Chris Godwin in round 5 was good process. Drafting Tyler Lockett, right, in round 6, that was good process. Drafting Keenan Allen over a Christian Watson, that's good process. That's good process down the board. That should Davante Adams in the late second round is good process if he's available. That's my larger point is there are certain wide receivers that give you stability and where they have to, reveal themselves as something other than what we've seen the last 5 years in order for them to fail. That's the guy I'm trying to draft in the first few rounds instead of taking chances that I don't need to take. I have so many rounds later that I can take my upside shots at wide receiver. I'm not here to take huge risks in those early rounds. And what's interesting is these risky receivers, they get steamed up even more in high stakes. And this is one of those sort of interesting conundrums that I talked to Billy and Theo about. I'm like, it seems like the more money is at stake, the more risks that these fantasy gamers, these managers are taking. I would think it's the opposite, right? When someone's in a $50 league, they're playing it safe and they're drafting Keenan Allen. Suddenly someone's playing, they're putting down $1,000 and they're drafting Christian Watson. This doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Well,
that is a weird phenomenon, isn't it?
Yeah, because Matt, what the reason behind that is you can't wait until you see it. At that point, it's too late. We're trying to project out the next big season, the Garrett Wilson. That's why he became a late first rounder, is because, hey, with Aaron Rodgers, we're thinking this guy's going for 1,600 yards and 14 touchdowns, and he's going to be Davante Adams with Aaron Rodgers, and you're trying to get ahead of the curve. Now, we
just draft Davante Adams.
Sure.
If you want the next Davante Adams, I have a great idea for you, Chris.
Yes.
This is what I'm saying.
Matt, he comes with Jimmy Garoppolo.
Crazy idea.
But Matt, he comes with Jimmy Garoppolo.
Instead of trying to draft the next Davante Adams, just draft Davante Adams.
Not all situations are the same, because guess what? We're getting Jimmy Garoppolo with Davante Adams, and you don't know what you're getting with Jimmy G. He's checked down Charlie.
He's a functional quarterback. He's not
He's
Zach
functional
Wilson.
until he's not. He's functional until he's on the sidelines hurt. And then obviously it happened to Aaron Rodgers.
And it happened to Derek Carr. The beauty of it happened to Derek Carr, and I think this was an underrated aspect of the Chris Olave draft pick, was that the backup quarterback, one of the better backup quarterbacks for fantasy, was in New Orleans. Right? Some of these teams, Chargers is one of those teams, Jets one of those teams where the real negligence by the front office was rolling with a non-functional backup quarterback. Do you even know who the backup quarterback is in Los Angeles for the Chargers?
Is it Easton Stick?
Right? I mean, the Chargers have made some great moves. Their front office has been, I think, above average. That's irresponsible. That's an irresponsible thing to do to that team.
Sure. You need the veteran. You need the veteran backup. Each team should have that that veteran quarterback that's making, 1.5 million. And if the ship sinks with the starter, the season isn't over. A la here we are in New York with the Jets and Zach Wilson. Aaron Rodgers even said in an interview leading into the season, late August, hey, I'm here. Zach can sit on the sideline for a couple of years and learn. Right there and then, he's telling you this kid isn't ready. He needs to sit on the sideline and learn. So when Rodgers goes down, you can't be in a position to throw this kid in. He should be QB3 with a clipboard for a year and a half. You need the Trevor Siemian that luckily they just brought in. And I know a lot of people aren't excited about Trevor Siemian, but guess what? He's a functional veteran that's going to be there, not going to see a deer in headlights. When he gets in the game, he's going to know how to read defenses, and he's going to get the ball out to Garrett Wilson and save Garrett Wilson's season. So people might not like the name.
It's an underreported huge move.
Yeah.
For fantasy.
And he will be the quarterback come week 6 at the latest. Once he gets up to speed and knows the playbook, bye-bye, Zach Wilson. You're going back to holding the clipboard. Simeon's going to come in and save this offense and save our Garrett Wilson shares, Matt.
Yeah, and to be clear, with Zay Jones' injury, you now need to be in on Calvin Ridley. I'm in on Calvin Ridley now, right? It's a big difference. It's a big difference now. Losing Zay Jones it matters for the target distribution quite a bit. The only good game so far that Calvin Ridley has posted has been against the Colts.
Yeah.
And they give up some of the most fantasy points to perimeter wide receivers. So, but this is a good spot for him. This is a
Make
good
no doubt
spot. This
about
is
it,
a
Matt.
there's
This
a
is a
this is a
huge game.
this is a
Huge
huge
game.
game. This is a huge week.
Yes,
I would
huge
argue
week.
this is the best week on the calendar. I mean, I challenge anyone in the chat, anyone, go find me a better week of NFL action than what we're looking at right now. And we're going to get into it. We're going to get into
Matt,
this.
are you a big fan? Matt, are you a big fan of the London games and getting the early start or what? I always ask this question to people.
I'm a big fan of the London games. We're going to look at all these. I want to go through the games that we have staring at us on this week 4 slate after this. Oh, I see it every day online, every single day. Hey, that looks like a great fantasy team in an 8-team league. Oh, wish I could be in a league with you, right? Well, guess what? Now you can respond with, sure, let's play on Bettle. That's the beauty of this platform. This new Bettle platform standardizes all position scoring. So you just load your team and you challenge your friend, your colleague, Twitter troll, and you can browse other teams and issue challenges. Bettle is revolutionizing fantasy football. And with code Underworld, you get a $100 instant deposit match plus a free $10. So even if you deposit 20, you get 50. Think about that. So go to Bettle.com. The code is Underworld. Bettle.com. The code is Underworld. Or click a link in the description. It's fun to be right. It is. It's been fun. Yes, last week was great. Again, I think this is this is normal NFL action, and I think we're going to have again a nice, consistent slate of action. When I go down the board and I see Falcons, Jaguars, and I see Lions, Packers, and I see Ravens, Browns, I see all these divisional grudge matches. I see potential shootouts. I see get right games. There's a lot of fun on this slate. I think it's the best slate of the year.
I agree, and like we were talking about before the break, Matt, it gets started early, and not only this week, but for the next 3 weeks, we get 9:30 a.m. starts, which I absolutely love. I know a lot of people don't love it.
Who doesn't like it? Why don't you like it?
There are a lot of people that they complain, oh, I'm on the West Coast, I got to get up early, and even the East Coasters sometimes don't like it. But you know what? Give me football all day and night long and sign me up. I love it. Get me up early and let's get going at 9:30. And I think we got a really nice matchup here with Jacksonville and Atlanta, and a big game, like we said, for Jacksonville after coming off 2 stinkers and down 2. You don't want to go to 1-3 as the favorite in that AFC South, and they're already struggling offensively here.
What about Travis Etienne? What do you expect from Travis Etienne this week? Right?
Love him, right? I expect it to continue. I expect him to keep producing top 8 RB1 overall season. He was an unbelievably great pick at that 3-4 turn. Sometimes he went late 3rd, sometimes he went in the early mid 4th, and he looks like an absolute smash pick at the running back position, Matt. And we talk about it week in and week out. The running back position is absolute trash, especially in the middle rounds. Matt, name me a good mid-round running back pick after the big bell cows of the first 2 rounds. Who are they? Where are they? They're nowhere.
Travis Etienne is a bell cow.
He is.
And I said, Travis Etienne had seasons of 40+ receptions in college with Trevor Lawrence at quarterback. This idea that he's not going to be a pass catcher this year is foolish. It was just an outlier, random distribution of receptions last year that led to him not having any game with 3 or more catches. Here he has 2 games with more than 3 catches this year. It's going to continue. He's got the size, the athleticism, the receiving skills. He's got everything you want. And he was available 2 rounds later than he should have been going. Everyone's so excited about the upside of this offense, all the touchdown equity there. Then why not Travis Etienne? And this is the game. It's not technically a home game because they're in Wembley Stadium, so they're not in Jacksonville. But this is, according to the schedule, a home game for them. This feels like one of those games where, on the face of it, it's going to, you want to stack Lawrence and Ridley and Kirk because there's no Zay Jones, but actually it's a Travis Etienne week.
Yeah, I hope so too. And the only negative I want to say with Travis Etienne, Matt, is last week they get down inside to the 1 yard line. They bring in Bigsby for the guard, the vulture touchdown. But 19 carries for Etienne. Again, he catches 4 balls for 50 yards. Give me that every single week. And Etienne was the answer after those top 6 running backs came off the board in the top 2 rounds. Etienne should have been locked in as that RB7 off the board. And sometimes he fell to RB 10, 11, 12 in drafts. I know I got him 48th overall in one draft at the end of the 4th round. And he's my RB3 on a team that started off Barkley and Pollard in the first 2 rounds. So, a strong running back build like that are tough to find with 3 bell cows. But Etienne, absolute stud. I just need Lawrence to pick it up because a lot of those yards, his stat line last week was a little fugazi, Matt, because, he was trailing the whole second half. Ridley, Kirk, and Ingram all had 1 catch going into halftime. That's absolutely unacceptable. They need to be firing. One of these guys should be 8 for 120 and a touchdown every single week in this offense. Let's see if Doug Peterson takes over the reins of play calling this week in London, gets this offense back on track. I know he lit into his offensive coordinator and coaches at halftime and said, let's open things up in the second half here. Let's see if they pick up where they left off late last week.
You got get right games coming. And if the get right game doesn't happen, if the player doesn't deliver the get right game, then you've got warning bells, right? So this is a potential warning bell week for a lot of players, including Trevor Lawrence.
Big time.
Right?
Big time.
Trevor Lawrence doesn't deliver. Calvin Ridley doesn't deliver in this spot against the Falcons with no Zay Jones. It is a warning bell week for a lot of these players. Like think about it. I mean, I can go down in every game. I can see, there's a warning bell player in every single game. I mean, look at the Broncos-Bears game. It's just all warning bells, right? Yeah. Russell Wilson's career is now at a crossroads. Justin Fields' career is now in jeopardy.
But Matt, Russell Wilson's been putting up numbers. I think this is a game where if you want to look at someone that needs to get going or it's time to hit the panic button, it's Javonte Williams for the Broncos.
That's another one.
If Javonte Williams comes out, lays another stinker, he's got to go to your bench and maybe for a while. But in terms of other Broncos here, this is Judy's 3rd game back now, and his snap percentage has been going up. From last week. His first start, I think he was at 68%, now up to like 76%. He needs to be on the field 90% of the time, Jerry Jeudy. So now let's start having this Jerry Jeudy wide receiver 2 overall season, starting this week versus this Bears secondary.
But if that's my big takeaway, though, that's the thing. It's everybody on this team, right? The Broncos have proven themselves to be the most burnable defense in the league. And last year, the Bears were the most burnable defense in the NFL. So we're looking for a big boom performance from DJ Moore. If he doesn't deliver, there's a warning bell, right? Jerry Jeudy better deliver. Javonte Williams better deliver.
Yeah.
There's a lot
worried about DJ
There's
Moore.
A lot of players that need that must have a good game. There's by far and away more players in this game that must perform or it's a danger zone.
Matt, DJ Moore, to our original point early on, DJ Moore was another name and another player that always came off the board before Deebo Samuel and Amari Cooper. And now
he did not. 100%. What are you talking about?
100%.
Deebo Samuel was not going after DJ Moore. 100%. What drafts are these?
Yeah, these were all the high stakes leagues. DJ Moore was going in the 3rd. Yes, he was mid-3rd round. Okay. And you saw Amari Cooper going mid-4th round, 100%.
I know that Amari Cooper got steamed up that high. That was
no,
something.
He didn't get steamed up. Amari Cooper got steamed down, meaning the opposite way. So DJ Moore was that hot receiver that people wanted in the middle of the 3rd round. And that's where he was going. And now it looks 3 weeks in like a big mistake, all because we expected Justin Fields to take another step forward, but he's taken 6 steps backwards. And now we got a major problem. If DJ Moore didn't get that late touchdown, he was in for another stinker, So He had a decent week 2, DJ Moore. He had a terrible weeks 1 and 3. Again, another guy, like you said, Matt, that week 4 is a big step. Because if he lays an egg here, okay, now we got 3 games where he's underproduced and 1 okay game. He's not a league-winning play here. He's sinking teams through 4 weeks, then helping them. So
no. What I was mentioning is Amari Cooper was going 5th round earlier in the summer, and then he moved up into the 3rd round. His ADP, his final ADP, his closing ADP at the FFPC was 40 exactly, and that's where I thought he was going. So that's what happened with Amari Cooper. But you are right. You are right. In the final week at the FFPC, DJ Moore moved up 8 spots from pick 47 to pick 39 ahead of Amari Cooper. You are absolutely right. Oh,
and I will say this, Matt.
I want to apologize to you.
FFPC receivers fall a little more. NFFC, where, I do a lot of my playing, Matt, wide receivers are even hot and heavier and move up even more. And
that's
DJ
right.
Moore
if he was
never made it out of the
39 at the FFPC, that means at the NFFC, he was an early 30s pick.
100%.
So listen, Chris, apologies.
Matt,
apologies. I was not in Vegas this year. I was not drafting in a high stakes in the final week of the season.
But
I did not know. That's how high, because the narrative I was hearing all year was there's not enough pass attempts in Chicago. But it's one thing to say that and then go ahead and draft DJ Moore in the mid 4th round. Fine. To move him up into the 3rd round, to move him up ahead of these, the Amari Coopers and the Keenan Allens and the Deebo Samuel. I can't believe that. I'm in shock. I mean, I have validated everything you've said.
Many regrets. Yeah, we have a lot of regrets.
Everything you've said is 100% correct. I'm now looking at the ADPs to close out the year, and you are right. Deebo Samuel, Amari Cooper, and DJ Moore were going at the same ADP. I can't believe it.
But in terms of on the board, just cold names, there's always cold names and hot names. You can always get the feel when you're in drafts and you're drafting every night. You always feel what receivers are the guys that are like, all right, let me take him. We're in the early 4th round. I'll take him here. And the guys that everybody wants mid 3rd, and they're getting steamed up. And it's just, Deebo and Cooper were names that were a little cold the last couple of weeks of the draft season. And DJ Moore was just as hot of a name in the 3rd round as a Christian Watson. So
I just don't understand it. Sometimes I feel like I'm in a bubble. Like I'm talking to Theo, I'm talking to Billy, I'm talking to Dario, and so sometimes I'm in this player profiler bubble, and some of these phenomenon that are happening in the larger fantasy universe, they don't make it to me. So it's maybe an interesting person to have on your show would be like the fact that I didn't even know this. And I'm like, I don't know. I thought you could get DJ Moore at the 4-5 turn. And then you're like, oh no. You weren't there for the last 2 weeks of draft season with me in the trenches with these guys. And again, it speaks to a lesson, which is if a guy's going to have a new quarterback, okay, and the quarterback that he has this year, this new quarterback, has a propensity to throw the ball 25 times a game, that's a risky pick. When it's one thing to take a shot on a guy in round 5 and 6. It's a different thing when the opportunity cost is Keenan Allen, Deebo Samuel, Amari Cooper.
Right.
The hell, man. The hell.
Listen, man, it's a huge week for Justin Fields in these next 1 or 2. Hey, listen, we saw this last year, right? Justin Fields was absolutely terrible in September. And just as everybody threw the towel in on him in weeks 4 or 5, it was after that Thursday night game, which ironically next week in week 5, I believe, he plays on a Thursday night. Everybody got rid of him last year. And then he turned his season around and made a run at his, a QB1 season.
Do you think he's gonna turn it around against
Denver? I don't have that. Listen, Matt, I didn't have that feeling last year because I was a guy that was getting rid of him and dropping him. He was I remember he was a QB2 on a lot of my teams that I drafted in round 15 or 16 just for the potential upside. And I said, all right, this isn't going to work out after 4 or 5 weeks and got rid of him. and then he went on to win all the money in the world. So this year, I think we're a week or two away from not dropping him, because you don't drop quarterbacks that you drafted in the 5th round. You bench them. But I think you're already at that point now where, we talked about Trevor Lawrence. We talk about Joe Burrow. This is 3 out of the top 8 quarterbacks on the draft board in every draft. The 3 of them are struggling big enough. I don't want to put Lawrence so much in the Fields and Burrow category right now, but Burrow and Fields, as of this week, you got to consider benching.
Yeah, and you can't, you cannot bench Russell Wilson. He's been a top 5 quarterback. He's got 19 plus fantasy points a game. Like, if there's one guy that he's getting the blame, like the mainstream media is saying, okay, this is a big game this is a big get right moment for Russell Wilson. And I'm looking up going, well, technically Russell Wilson has been fine for fantasy, but when you're down 70, it wasn't down 70, but when you're down 50, he was down 50 at the end of the game. When you're down 50, you need to put up 400 yards.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So yes, he did have 300 yards last week, but he should have had more. He should have done better. He's been behind, playing in garbage time, in comeback mode.
That all factors in, Matt. That all factors in. We want the bad defense, Matt. We want the team with the bad defense that we know we're going to be down 14-21 in the second half.
I know, but what I'm saying is, if you're a Broncos fan and you're evaluating Russell Wilson, he's giving you the bare minimum given the negative game script.
Sure.
So we are going to see what happens this week. It's just the Vegas line on this one is the most fascinating, because there's a couple of these where the home dog is getting 3.5.
Yeah.
And whenever I see the home dog getting 3.5, that is always the most. And we have 2. We have the Panthers getting 3.5, and we have the Bears getting 3.5. Yeah. And for me, that's always the most fascinating line, because that's Vegas saying, we actually want you to take the road favorite, right? Where they're trying to coax you into taking the road favorite, which is always weird with the Vikings and the Broncos, especially the Vikings and Broncos are both 0-3, and they are road favorites by more than a field goal.
Yeah, that's not crazy
to me.
Yeah. And then you wonder what the line is going to do if Dalton doesn't start for Carolina, and it might go up even more.
Who's the backup behind Dalton? Who is it?
No, the rookie. What do you call it?
Bryce Young.
Bryce Young.
So you think Bryce? Okay. So Bryce Young.
I'm saying if Dalton doesn't start, and Bryce Young comes back, that line might go up to 5 or 6. Because Bryce Young is in over his head right now, early on, and Dalton, capable veteran. It should
be Dalton. If they're trying to win games, it'll be Dalton. If they're trying to tank to get a great draft pick next year to help build the franchise, it'll be Bryce Young. Yeah. The backup quarterback behind Andy Dalton is Matt Corral. Yeah. Behind him is Jake Luton. So they actually are carrying 4 quarterbacks with Luton on the practice squad. Yeah. So that's where their quarterback room is. You definitely don't want to see Matt Corral. It's going to be.
I don't think you're in danger of any of these guys. I'm saying Andy Dalton.
It's probably going to be Andy Dalton. Yeah. They should let Bryce Young, if they are doing what's right for the franchise and what's right for Bryce Young, they're going to give one more game to Andy Dalton. That's what should happen. Yeah. In fact, this is when the equity holders of the team need to get involved. Yeah. If you hear, like, if you are whatever the hedge fund billionaire who bought this team, right? If you hear they're going to start Bryce Young this week, you need to make a phone call and be like, no, you're not.
Same thing with Anthony Richardson and Jim Irsay in Indianapolis. Anthony Richardson, as of today, is still in the concussion protocol. So if you're in the concussion protocol here Wednesday after a week and a half, you're not starting again. So, be prepared for Gardner Minshew again for Indianapolis this week. And there's no reason to rush these young rookie quarterbacks. We already saw, these 2 guys get banged up. CJ Stroud, by the way, while we're talking about rookie quarterback, CJ Stroud is looking unbelievable. Looks like the real deal. Should have been the number 1 overall pick. CJ Stroud is supporting an unbelievable offense here that a lot of people didn't see coming to fruition this early. But CJ Stroud's going to be if he's available on the wire, and I see him in a lot of my leagues available still, people are going to be dropping a bag on him tonight in waivers to try and bring him on their roster and maybe fill in for struggling teams such as the Joe Burrows, Justin Fields, especially. You'll see that a lot. Matt. I think that Justin Fields owner, Dak Prescott too. A lot of these quarterbacks that were drafted, QB 10 and later are getting the job done this year. And we didn't even touch on Tua, who is the absolute smash spot quarterback pick on the draft board through 3 weeks and looks like he could be the league-winning quarterback this year in this offense. So, CJ Stroud, you look for the Justin Fields managers to go in and drop a bag on CJ Stroud tonight and see if they could get through these early season struggles.
Well, don't tell Vegas this because the Texans are 3-point dogs at home against the Steelers.
Nobody's believing. Yeah, they're not believing yet. The
Steelers are 2-1. That's the fakest 2-1 record I've ever seen.
Agree.
Their offense is anemic. Their defense is not impressive. Everyone forgot about what happened in week 1, apparently, where they could not stop the 49ers and they could not matriculate the ball a yard down the field. It was very weird. The one drive, the one touchdown to Freiermuth, and that was all they could manage, all they could muster the entire game. And yet the Steelers are now 3-point favorites on the road at Houston. Yeah. Can you explain that?
Vegas still not believing in a young Houston team to beat to beat a team in Pittsburgh that they travel well. I'm sure Houston Stadium is going to sound like a road game to them, just like everywhere Pittsburgh goes. Pittsburgh beat Vegas last week. It wasn't that impressive. Their run game is still stuck in neutral. Harris looks terrible. And I'm still waiting for Jaylen Warren to slowly take over this backfield for Pittsburgh. But, I see it the same way, Matt. But, yeah, it's a little bit of a fishy line. But I don't think Vegas is prepared right now to make the Texans a favorite over, a Mike Tomlin coach team.
I don't know what more they need to see.
Listen, they just went on the road and beat up a playoff team. They beat up a playoff team in Jacksonville on the road. So
I've seen enough from the Texans. This is exciting, man. You're right. Yes. CJ Stroud is the real deal. He did it at a higher level, more consistently, was just as prolific, even more efficient at Ohio State than Bryce Young was at Alabama. And he's got the prototypical QB size, athleticism that you want. It never made sense. The Bryce Young 101 over CJ Stroud never made sense. It was a head scratcher from the beginning. I didn't get it. But yeah, we're looking at like Vikings Panthers, both 0-3 teams. So this is fascinating. And that's the last thing that they want to do. Go on the road. Yeah. Right. Go on. They're Vikings. They need to win. They're going to go on the road, face a difficult defense. That's an interesting game. But
that's a sneaky shootout game, I believe. If Dalton starts, with the emergence of, Thielen's looking good. DJ Chark is back healthy now, and I think he should be prioritized in Fab tonight also.
Thank you.
DJ
Chark. That was my number one value pick for Fab this week was DJ Chark.
Okay. I love
Mingo's in the concussion protocol. Chark came in, commanded a bunch of targets. He's their downfield playmaker. So you have Thielen underneath, and you have Chark over the top against the Vikings. This is the perfect spot for Chark. If you're ever going to start him, it'd be this week.
And they're going to have to keep up with Minnesota because Minnesota with Carolina's banged up defense and their secondary is a mess right now. Kirk is going to put it on them, okay? They got no answers for Justin Jefferson and this offense. So Minnesota's going to hang a 30 on them. And if Dalton's behind center, he's going to do what he did last week in Seattle. And he's going to have to throw the ball another 55 times. And with Thielen and Chark out there, if, like you said, if Mingo sits, and again, another young kid that why rush him back from a concussion?
Why?
So give him the week off, okay? The piece in this offense I want to see, because I started dropping him last week, and I don't regret it after his last week game, is after the first week, Hayden Hurst I thought was going to be a top 15 tight end in this offense, and then he kind of disappeared the last couple of weeks. I don't know if he could contribute as a third target in this offense Maybe in a game like this, he's a sneaky start at the tight end position if you're needy. And a lot of us are tight end needy already 3 weeks into the season.
It's interesting that Jordan Love has been exactly what I thought we were going to get from Pickett.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's running, he's reckless, right? He's leading comebacks, and Pickett has been pretty anemic. But look at Freiermuth. Freiermuth, 46 receiving yards through 3 games.
Yeah, he's been a huge disappointment, Matt.
This is another game.
Bailed out with a touchdown. We got bailed out with a touchdown last week.
Yeah, another guy that we need to see something this week. This is a must produce. There are so many players in must produce spots.
Yeah. Matt, how about this?
Is one of them.
Matt, how about this at the tight end position? While you're bringing up Freiermuth's been a huge disappointment, how about these 3 names for you and how big of a disappointment they've been? David Njoku for 3 weeks. Huge disappointment. Okay? He was a top 12 tight end.
Through 3 weeks?
Through 3 weeks.
I thought you were going to say through 6 years of a career.
No, Njoku had a nice season last year, so we got to give him that much. But through 3 weeks, he was a tight end that was a top 12 tight end that we thought, okay, in this offense, he could play the role as a second target, maybe if not at least a third target. He's had 3 soft games this week. Dalton Schultz, a lot of people came up on. He's Dumpsville at this point. Dalton Schultz is like the unheard of man. And I'm starting to get a little worried. I don't know about you, Matt, about Dalton Kincaid in Buffalo. 2 catches.
You should be worried. You should be worried. What the case for Dalton Kincaid in seasonal leagues was always dubious to me because it's not like he's going to just outright, relegate. Dawson Knox is going to be in there, especially in goal line situations. The touchdowns are going to go to Dawson Knox, and you look up and touchdown red zone targets. Who are they going to? Oh, they're going to Dawson Knox. Not necessarily complete, but they're going to Dawson Knox. That makes sense. Makes sense. We just look at target conservation. Who's in a position to command the most targets? It was LaPorta. That was the guy that was in the best position to command targets, especially after Jameson Williams got suspended.
Sure. But I looked at the offenses a little similar, and I'll tell you right off the bat, my tight end plan in all my drafts this year, I was not getting any of the elite guys early. I was waiting on tight end, and my 2 biggest targets that I wanted were Kincaid and LaPorta. Okay, so if you went through all my fantasy teams, I have one of them as my starting tight end, if not both of them, because I would double tap Kincaid and LaPorta. Okay, and admittedly, Matt, I had Kincaid ahead of LaPorta. Okay. This looks like it might be a big mistake. Okay. Kincaid was coming off the board a couple rounds earlier, 2 or 3 rounds before LaPorta. So a lot of people saw it my way. Okay. But on the teams that I have Kincaid and LaPorta's locked in as my starter with Kincaid on the bench. That's a huge flip right there with these 2. But in an offense in Buffalo, Matt, with just Diggs and Gabe Davis, there was no reason not to think Kincaid could step in here, play 75% of the snaps right off the bat, like a LaPorta is doing as the second target in the offense, and play this role, okay? First week, we saw it a little bit, and now this week was a little concerning. I still have high hopes for Kincaid in this offense just because look at this past week. Nobody saw more than 4 targets for the Bills. I know the game got away from, game got crazy out of hand. Okay. But nobody saw more than 4 targets in the Bills offense. It was Diggs getting 11 or 12 targets and being the complete alpha. And then everybody else just played a distant, second role. But Kincaid, I still have high hopes for, but this is a big week for him too. If he lays another stinker, we have a lot of duds at the tight end position.
Yeah. Of all these games, the game that you could argue because you have a 3-0 team going on the road to the Bills, 2-1, that there aren't that many you must produce this week.
Right.
Except there's one guy. You're absolutely right. There's one guy in this game who is a must produce player that when you're watching the box scores on Sunday, you gotta see where Kincaid is. And again, I get untethered from ADP sometimes. And so sometimes some of my positions sound like hot takes. But sometimes it just comes down to something simple. Like LaPorta to me at the position, on the 10-yard line, who are they going to call a play for? LaPorta or Brock Wright? The answer is LaPorta.
Of course.
Who is Buffalo going to call a play for? Well, flip a coin between Knox and Kincaid. So that's the problem. That's why, to me, the answer was LaPorta. Now, I liked your strategy overall, though. I had a very similar strategy. My firewall, and where if you go draft by draft, I either got Freiermuth or I got Evan Ingram. They had a similar ADP. It was they were interchangeable ADPs. Really, whoever was there for me,
Huge difference right now
in the 7th and 8th round.
Yeah.
And now you look up, and I'm loving my teams with Evan Ingram and my teams with Pat Freiermuth. It's like he better do something this week. There's
no reason it shouldn't be happening, Matt, because Deontay Johnson is gone.
It's crazy. This is what I'm saying.
When Deontay Johnson went down, I said, okay, at least Freiermuth shares are going to prosper here for the next 4 or 5 weeks here without Deontay Johnson, and it hasn't happened.
When a player does not capitalize on target conservation, that's when it becomes a real warning bell situation, right?
Yeah.
And then when players do capitalize on it, it's exciting. Look, think about this game. Bengals at the Titans. This is a must get right game for Joe Burrow, for T. Higgins. I mean, is T. Higgins going to play in this game?
Well, he better show up this week because he's dropped 2 duds in the first 3 weeks. Luckily, week 2, he salvaged himself late in the game with the couple touchdowns. So he had a good week 2, but he had a good fourth quarter.
He's had one good quarter.
One good quarter. Yeah, 100%. And when you think about it, he was a late 2nd round pick, and he went before Keenan Allen and DK Metcalf on every draft board. And that's looking like a major mistake, because when you look back at it, to our original part in the opening of our show here, Matt, is you're looking at guys that are alpha wide receiver ones in Keenan Allen and DK Metcalf, and a guy on a team that we bought into just because of Joe Burrow and the big time offense to buy into T. Higgins. But he's a distant wide receiver 2 on that team. And we were taking him before these 2 alphas in Keenan Allen and DK Metcalf. That's looking like a major mistake as well. But this is,
T. Higgins
I don't think Joe Burrow's
well-documented fake alpha.
Yeah, but Joe Burrow, I don't know if he's capable right now, Matt, of having that 350 and 3 touchdown type Joe Burrow game with this Bengal offense. They're just trying to get through each game, win it 24-20, 24-17. The defense has stepped up. Lou Anarumo is an unbelievable defensive coordinator. Until Joe Burrow starts feeling better, the days of Joe Burrow 350-4, 350-3 aren't there. And I don't know if this offense can support 2 big wide receivers on a weekly basis. So it was great to see Jamar Chase, have the game that we expected from him as our number 2 overall pick on draft boards. That's what he should do. He should see those games every week. Put him in the slot. There was no answer for him in the slot on Monday night. Get him his touches, his design touches, where at minimum, he's catching 7-8 balls every week and, 1 or 2 big plays each week. But at minimum, he should be catching those, quick 7-yarders, 9-yarders here and there, and let the numbers rack up. And if that's the case and that's the offense the Bengals going to run here, okay, T. Higgins is going to have a lot of these weeks where he's 4 for 40 and taking a back seat because Chase is the alpha, okay? And that's that. And this is the week, danger. Though. The Tennessee secondary, the way you attack Tennessee, obviously, is you can't run on them. They're a great defensive, they're great defensively against the run. The secondary is a mess. They have no answers for Chase or Higgins. So one of these guys is going over 100 and having a big blow-up game, and we'll see from there.
And it could be Tyler Boyd.
It was looking scary for all the people that, Tyler Boyd was sitting.
Listen, we haven't seen the practice reports yet on T. Higgins. T. Higgins went to the locker room.
It was
cramped. See what happens.
No, it was that was cramping. So he came right back
cramping?
out. Yeah, he came right back out. He missed 1 series, and he was there for the last 5 part. 5
so no practice report monitoring for T. Higgins. He's going to play. That's not a problem. Okay,
Saquon Barkley though, we're on practice alert for Saquon Barkley though here, Matt. That's what we're on.
He's not playing. You think he's playing?
If I had to put my money down, I say no. Okay. I think they give him
fine.
another week. But man, Dayball's talking really positively about him. I don't know. I really don't know.
He better
It's
not
it's
play.
a
Well,
real
give
50
him one more week
proposition.
off. He's not going to be right for a few more weeks anyway. Here's a debate that we're having at Player
Mhm.
Profiler, especially for Dynasty. Zay Flowers. Some people think that he should be vaulted into the top 15, top 12 Dynasty receivers. But we have conservative elements of our organization that are like, hey man, easy on the 3-year projections extrapolation.
Yeah.
How do you feel about Zay Flowers?
Oh my God, what a great pick this year in drafts. And to think that, like Jackson Smith and Jigba was coming off the board and mostly every draft before him, that's looking like a real, real bad decision for people that took him over Zay Flowers. Zay Flowers stepped right into this offense, and he's going to be the alpha wide receiver one going forward. Bateman's gone with this hamstring injury. He was a dud anyway.
He's dust.
Beckham's banged up. This
Dust.
offense, all of a sudden, we came into this season looking at this Ravens offense with huge high hopes, having Bateman, Beckham, Flowers, Andrews, just weapons everywhere in a Ton Munkin offense that we thought would be, like a run and shoot, pitch wide open offense. And 3 weeks into the season, this offense has been condensed now to Zay Flowers getting 10 targets, 8 to 10 targets every week as the alpha one, and Mark Andrews, who needs to step his game up. After missing week 1, he hasn't done much. But that's where you're going to see it.
Another guy, man.
Another
guy where it's
Dad,
like
who's good at tight
it's
ends?
a must perform. It's a must perform week for Mark Andrews as well.
Mark Andrews, yeah, 100%.
There's
the whole
so
position.
many of these guys. It's
really
incredible.
Is.
It's incredible. But yes,
but Zay Flowers
was always a great pick. I loved the Zay. My favorite stack was Lamar Jackson, Zay Flowers, because you could get the beauty was, especially for best ball, that was the only wide receiver who was the wide receiver one for that team who was getting drafted after a stud quarterback. When you go team by team and you look, from the Chargers to the Bengals, you go down the board, all these great teams, all these great receivers that are tethered to great quarterbacks. Think about Diggs, right? Diggs goes before Allen, right? You go all the way down the board, you're always going to see, Tyreek Hill going before Tua, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there was this one quarterback, Lamar Jackson, whose number one wide receiver, whoever it was going to be, Bateman, Flowers, even if you were debating it, he was going rounds later than the quarterbacks. You could always guarantee a stack. And when you draft Lamar Jackson, then you're more likely to get Zay Flowers because all the other teams are more incentivized to draft receivers that pair with their quarterbacks.
Yeah.
And then so you could always get him at a discount later. Zay Flowers is always available at a discount later because you were the only one truly incentivized to draft him, to stack him. So that's a
great point.
If you look across the league, that was actually the only scenario with an elite quarterback where the receiver was going well after the stud quarterback. So that was the thesis.
And that's only because Andrews was Andrews was a third rounder.
Because of Andrews, but again, it was a lower volume offense, but that was the thesis.
Yep.
And that the bottom line is Zay Flowers is just a much more dominant receiver than a Quentin Johnston. Quentin Johnston, another receiver who's in a must-produce situation, right? We talked about this with Calvin Ridley. So many of these players, it's like there's less target competition now for Mark Andrews. There's less target competition now for Pat Freiermuth. So many of these players have less target competition. They've underwhelmed, and they have great matchups. If you're Quentin Johnston, now is the week. You better show yourself. What if Quentin Johnston does this week?
Matt, I'll be honest with you. I don't expect to see it this week. I don't expect to break out the Quentin Johnston. There's a reason why they brought him along slowly here. I don't know if he's ready to take on a full workload, and I still expect him to be the fourth target in this offense. Obviously after Keenan Allen, Josh Palmer's still is going to be locked in as the 2. And I think the biggest benefactor of the injury to Mike Williams is Gerald Everett.
Yes,
I think
that's right.
is Gerald Everett.
That's it.
Gerald Everett might
tight
be
end. There you go. This could be a big week.
Gerald Everett might be on his way to a top 8 tight end season. I think that, listen, we've got the quarterback, we got the offense. It all sets up perfectly. The first couple of weeks, people were dropping Gerald Everett. If they took him late in the drafts, they were getting rid of him. I scooped him up in a handful of leagues here before the Mike Williams injury. Just to be my
the teams where you had Kincaid, right?
Yes, as a matter of fact. Yeah, no doubt about it. That is where I picked him up on is some Kincaid.
That's right.
Teams.
That's a smart move, dude.
And I'm going right
because he has a lot of similarities to Kincaid.
Yeah. Now listen, Gerald Everett, when he's out there, he looks like Mike Williams. He's got the speed. He's going to step in and have a lot of these 6 for 60 and a touchdown type weeks in this Chargers offense and hit the board as a top 6 tight end. So Gerald Everett goes right into your right into your lineups, in my opinion.
You heard it here. Chris Vacarro is not expecting a goddamn thing from Quentin Johnston. Hey, I want to take a moment to thank you for tuning in. It's important to me that all of our media be free. This is only possible because of you allowing a true independent sports media enterprise to thrive unlike any other in the business. So please subscribe to the All In Package to continue to make all of this possible, to ensure that all of our stats, information, data, content is available to you, especially you, the people that get the site and get the show.